Yeah, welcome back to my class today. In the last class, what we did was what? Socket programming, right? Now, this was the program that we wrote on the screen. And I demonstrated this for you to see. I say import socket, host, which is what? A loopback address, port number. Then we created a server object using the socket class. And then we now bind this server to what? To the host and the port. And then the server is now listening on uh, this port. Then I told you that you have a client. We are assuming that the client is trying to connect to the server. So in trying to connect to the server will now call the accept method from what? From this socket class. And that accept method will create an object. So the object name is what? Connect, which is what? Connecting to a client. And the address of that client is also here. Now, I printed this out on the screen, which is what? Connection from the address of the server. Now, what came was in byte, and now you have to convert that byte to what? To a string. That is what we did here. Now, today, what I want to show you is what task is this server expected to do. This server is expected to communicate with the client. So for this server to be able to communicate with the client, I am going to create a loop, a while loop, right? So what should be here? I want to write it here for you to see. So what should be under this place? What should be here is what I want to move here. So what should be here is what I want to write here. All right. Now, because I want this server to keep expecting or communicating with the client, I'm going to use a while loop. So I will say while true, right? This automatically becomes an infinite loop. The server will continue to listen on this port for the client conversation. While true, go in, create data, right? You are creating a reference, a variable in the Python world. And what you are doing is that this object, this connect object, right? This connect object that the server created using this accept method is now what you are going to be using, because this connect object is like a network, a point-to-point network that has been established between the server and the client. So that is what the server is going to be using to communicate with the client. So while true, then you will say data connect dot r receive. So what you are doing is you are using that object to receive 1024 dot the code. What you are doing is you are using that object, that connect object, and you are now calling the receive method to receive 1024 bytes from the client. And then because it's coming in bytes, you have to pass it to this decode method. So this decode method will now decode it and convert it to a string and store it here, right? Now, because this is an infinite loop, I want to give an instruction such that if the client stops sending message, then the server too can stop listening, right? So I will say if not data, right? Go in and break. What this simply means is come out of the loop. So when you receive data and you store it inside this data, if it is not data, break, go in and break, meaning come out of this while loop. But if it is data, meaning there's something inside this data, what should you do? You say print from client, then give a space, and then plus str data, right? Now, so If it is data, that means you've received data from the client, and that data is stored in this place. Then you can print it out on the screen. Now, once you print it out on the screen, it is now expected that the server is going to respond to that client, like your WhatsApp. Somebody sent you a message, you receive the message, and then you respond back by typing. So once this is printed on the screen, I want something else to be displayed, expecting the person that's controlling that server to now input the response, right? So print from client. This one is a string literal that will be printed on the screen from client. Then the data will be printed here. Then the next thing is what? I will say data. I will call the input function. Type message. So I want this to be printed out on the screen. I want you to observe something here. This data and this data, they are the same. Now this data is now acting as a switch. So let me just quickly demonstrate that for you to see. Now you now have something here, right? Then you have this, then you have this, and then you have this, right? So this, now this little thing that I demonstrate on the screen is like a switch. So in the Python realm, you're having this data as a pointer. When the client sends a message, this data is going to point to that memory location and pick that message to what? To the Python world. Now, whoever it is that is controlling that server now wants to respond to the client. He has to send a message back. So the moment this is printed, that is the client message is printed on the screen, this next line will appear, type message will appear on the screen for the server to now input the response. That response that is imputed into the system now is now also going to be stored in data. Don't forget, data is a placeholder, is a pointer. So when it is receiving, so this is the circuit. The circuit is like this. So this side is the client. This side is the server. So data, client sends a message, data receives it, and then server sees it, which is what? Seeing on the screen. Then this immediately will be printed out on the screen. Server will enter his own message, it will come back to data, and then it will be sent out. So like this, that's how it is going. So this data is the one that is doing the switching in the Python realm. So all the other behaviors that are going to act will be acting on this data. So they will be acting on this data. To the client will send a message here. All these methods, all these things that are working on it will act on the data. Server will see it. Server will send message here. All of them will work on the data. Client will see it. So client and server are communicating. But the way they are communicating is through this guy and through all the methods that are in the server world, in the Python world that are working on this for the client and the server to be seeing themselves. So the server and where both of them are now seeing is what? Screen. So which is what? The word. The word is the screen in which the client is using to see. So your phone screen, you are seeing the message from the server on your phone screen. The server is seeing the message from you on your phone screen. But behind the scene, everything is happening inside the Python realm. So the screen is just the place that enables you to see what is happening in the realm. So the world where you are seeing things. So you and somebody you are interacting, you are seeing the person. That is the screen. That is what I'm trying to establish in this class, right? So let's conclude this part. Now, type message. So the moment the server now type the response, that will go back to the client. That object, which is what? This connect object, right, will now be used. So connect will now be used, and this connect will now call the send method. Connect.send right? We'll now call the send method, and it will send data, which is what? This data, and then it will give it to the encode method for it to go. So connect will call the send method, and the send method will now take this data. You have input the response, and it is stored here. So the send method will take it, and then it will pass it to encode. What you are sending is a string literal. So that string literal cannot go in the cable. So this send will now take that data and hand it over to the encode method. The encode method will now convert it from the string to what? To byte. And then it will now go through the cable to what? To the receiver, which is what? The client that was trying to communicate. Now, that is what is happening inside this loop. The moment the client stops sending message, which is what? There will be nothing inside this data. Then this will become true. It will come into this place and it will break. When it breaks, it will come out of this loop. So coming out of this loop, it will come here. That will be the same line. Here, it will come here, and then it will say connect, which is what? This object dot close. Now that is the end. So connect dot close. You can see this one is not inside this loop. It's the same line with the while loop. So everything that is here should be under this place. Now, this is the establishment of connection between the client and the server. Once the connection is established, the client is now going to send a message. When the message is sent, so the server is creating a loop to consistently listen and receive message from the client. When the client sends a message, the server will receive that message, will wait until message 1024 bytes, which is 1 kilobyte, will now be decoded and then stored in this data. Then, because there is data, this one will not take place. It will come here and it will print from client and it will print that message on the screen, which is when somebody sends you a message on WhatsApp, you see it. Then, immediately, an input function will be called and this message should come out on the screen, type message. So you type your response and then you click on send. When you are clicking on send, this is what you are doing. So that object, which is this object that the accept method created, will call the send method. That send method will take that data, give it to the encode method. Encode will convert it to byte and then it will send it. When there's no message again from the client, then connect will close the process and then end message should be typed at the bottom. So this is the server part that I've shown you, which you saw. So this is the server part. In the next class, I'm now going to show you the client part that is establishing this connection, because it's still the same thing too. On the side of the client, this will be created. Then we will now see how the client is sending a message to the server and the server is receiving it. And then we'll now go to the PyCharm and I will completely demonstrate the two videos to you practically to see how you are using your WhatsApp to communicate with another person. So till we see in the next class. Bye-bye.